Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first planning committee of 2026. We have a very full agenda this afternoon, which I'm sure will be starting us off in the way in which we go for the rest of the year. So, can I begin with any apologies for absences? So, Mr. Dean, who is being substituted by Mr. Ellicott, otherwise I think we're a full house. Are there any declarations of interest or lobbying of members or unaccompanied site visits that members need to declare, please?
Yes.
Mr. Elton.
Yes. If you'll excuse me for a second, I did receive one email in respect of, so I'm just getting the correct page loaded on here, in respect of the item 7.3 on the agenda. I received an email from the applicant. I don't know if other people did as well.
Yes, I did.
It had some brief details in it. I'll have them replied.
Okay.
Yes, I got the same.
So we'll make that then as a general note that some members have received that. I think members variously have been involved in discussions over item 002, which we're all going to be participating in later on in this agenda. But I believe it is the case that nobody has expressed any determination in that, and that any involvement has been in the ordinary course of consideration of the application. Mr. Trios?
I didn't hear what item.
009.
Well, I received an email regarding agenda item 7.1, which I haven't replied to.
Okay. Anything else that members wish to draw attention to, please? No, thank you very much. So, minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 2nd of December 2025. May I take this true record, please? Looks happy? Yes, thank you. Any matters arising from page 1? Page 2? Page 3? Or page 4? No. Thank you very much. I'm not aware of any business of urgency that we will need to raise this afternoon. Public speaking, we will, as is customary, take public speaking in relation to the particular planning item with which it is associated. So we will then move to item 6, which is appeal decisions, and I will ask Mr. White to refer to this particular application.
Thank you, Chairman. Just quickly on the appeal then. The appeal related to a certificate of lawfulness application, so it's not a planning application in a normal sense. What the application related to was the submission of an application to seek to clarify whether the erection of some walls and the gate next to a property would have been permitted development or not. Okay. When officers looked at it from the authority, we came to the view that it couldn't be permitted development because one of the criteria for it to have been permitted development would be that it can't be within the curtilage of a listed building. The property in this case, Hall Farm, is a Grade 2 listed building. We felt it fell within its curtilage, therefore it needed planning permission. That was disputed by the applicant, who then turned out to be the appellant. It's quite a long running appeal. The application was refused in July 2023, so it's taken a while for it to come through. But it is a very thorough decision. Its decision runs to 5 pages for that sole issue. But you can quite easily see, I think, why the inspectors come to the conclusion they have, given how they've set that out through their analysis. They acknowledge that the land which is surrounded by the wall and fence is in close proximity to the listed building, but actually that land didn't form part of the curtilage of the building, therefore it could have been development. So they have disagreed with officers in that sense, but they've been very clear in their analysis around that and rationalised the decision to allow the appeal and actually confirm that the wall and gate in that instance are permitted development, and that's ultimately how it's been resolved.
Thank you. I think that's fairly straightforward. Mr. Hopley,
Yes.
are you joining us?
Yes. Is there a seat over there?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't see it.
So, for the benefit of, well, Claire, could you just put a chair there? For the benefit of attendees, Mr. Hopley is also a member of the committee. He was attending an online briefing this morning and left that and came straight here to the meeting. He has now joined us in time to be able to participate in item 7.1. Okay. So, is there any comment on the appeal decision? Which I think is fairly straightforward. Dr. Kelly?
It is, Chair. It's quite useful, though, in terms of clarifying the extent of the listing. Paragraph 7 is interesting. When it talks about, it's crucial to note that the listing of a building encompasses any object or structure attached to it, as well as any freestanding structure erected before 1st of July 1948. This holds true regardless of whether such objects have been explicitly identified in the list description, and that is a common misconception in my experience. So it does clarify that point, which is useful. I'm sure we all know this, and officers, but in my experience at least, that isn't the case with the general public. And again, paragraph 21 very clearly states the reasons for allowing the appeal. So I think it's quite useful in terms of the information set out in that decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll now move on to item 7.1, application 6824-002, proposed erection of 9 affordable dwellings and 7 principal residence-only dwellings, and also a two-site application, effectively, one at Dunkery View Farm and at Wedden Cross, and land north of High Park Lane at Cutcombe. So I will ask Mr. White to present this report, and then we will have the public speaking immediately afterwards. Mr. White.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is an application which is significant in the National Park context. It's a proposal for 16 dwellings in total, and as the Chairman's explained, they would be over 2 sites. A single site up here off Higher Park Lane, and then the larger site just next to Dunkery View Farm at the other end of the village. It does seek to deliver 9 locally affordable dwellings, and they're proposed to be provided in part through the cross-subsidy from 7 principal residence dwellings. The 9 affordables will be all on this site here, the 6 principal residence dwellings, and the principal residence dwelling up on the other site. They are taken together in terms of their viability and needed to deliver the affordable dwellings. The scheme is or would also come forward with the benefit of grant funding from the local housing authority and from Homes England. Many members attended the site visit last Friday, so a number of people here or members here today have had the benefit of visiting that site, and we were able to view those sites within the context of the surrounding elements and obviously the wider village. Members have a detailed committee report before them, which outlines and considers the main planning matters presented by the proposal. And at the site visit, I did run through a number of plans, which we will show for the benefit of everybody again this afternoon. Before I get to that, I have got a late letter, which I'd like to just report verbally, Chairman. It is from Hazel Crockford, who's a local resident and also on the parish council. In summary, she says that the village is fortunate to have a number of services and facilities, and it has a good selection of accommodation. And also a good selection of accommodation is offered by the development proposal in terms of the houses proposed. She says the developer has committed to keeping the main road clean throughout the expected 2 years of work, the construction work. She says what must not be overlooked is that all those working on the site from day one will need feeding and possibly accommodating locally. She says it's more than likely that local people will find employment on the site, and she says that many businesses are in desperate need of employees, and these will hopefully come in part from the new homes. She says that she supports the project 100%, and she looks forward to the start of this exciting development. So just back to the detail of the proposal. That's the aerial photograph. As I say, the report refers to a larger site, which is the one next to Dunkery View, and a smaller site, which is off Higher Park Lane. Sorry, what we're going to do, we'll concentrate on the higher site, the larger site to start with, and then we'll look at plans for the smaller site. We're taking the access off the A396, which is shown by this slide, something we looked at on the site. It's been quite a long time to get to this point, the application, Chairman. Some of that was relating to the highway implications, and some of that's related largely to surface water management and the connection to existing drainage. Some of the issues around highways, I think, there was a misconception in terms of how this new T-junction would be provided. It was believed initially that there would be a build-out in the A396. That's been clarified that it won't be. It would be a simple T-junction off the road with the required visibility displays in either direction, and then footpath either side. The proposals do include, as we looked at when we were on site, the provision of a new footpath along the frontage of the Moorland Hall, the village hall adjacent to the site. Currently there's an earth sort of bank or bund there. The proposal is to remove that, replace it with a footway with a natural wall behind. You would still have the accesses at either end as they are now into the Moorland Hall car park, but it would provide an important pedestrian link back to the village and its facilities. And that's just picking up on a bit more detail. So this plan, that's the existing situation on the top half, proposed on the bottom half. Shaded building is Moorland Hall, the A396 runs on the bottom, so the application site's just to the right on both of these. That's the earth bund, that will be removed, replaced with a tarmac path, again with the wall behind. Let's just pick up that detail again, Chairman, so you can see the wall behind on the proposed section below, existing above. That's the layout proposed scheme, so the 15 dwellings within the site. Just for reference, there's the Moorland Hall, A396 running on the top of the slide here. New T-junction coming into the site. A terrace of 4 dwellings adjacent to junction with an attenuation pond beside that to help manage surface water, and then dwellings further into the site. These are located 4 dwellings here, along here, and then you have some principal residence dwellings. Importantly, the 3 dwellings here are proposed as single storey. That's reflecting the slope of the site, and we'll see that more clearly in a section in just a moment. That's just a plan to pick up the tenures in a bit more detail again. So the affordable dwellings are proposed to deliver social rent dwellings, which are in the light green here, and also low cost home ownership dwellings, so discounted from the open market with a discount of at least 40%, and then the blue plots are those which are principal residents. The 3 single storey ones here are proposed as all abilities or adaptable dwellings for lifetime homes. There's quite a lot going on that plan, but it's really just to pick up, it's part of the surface water management. So the attenuation pond here in the bottom corner, the green areas here, there below ground attenuation tanks, which is all part of collecting obviously the water from the site in the attenuation tank, and then connects to the existing highway drain to ensure that the runoff from the site isn't any greater than it currently is as a greenfield site. And as I say, that's something that's been taking a little while to get through, but the lead local flood authority are now satisfied that surface water will be adequately managed within the development. It's another layout plan, really just picking up some of the external lighting, but I'll touch on that before I finish this morning. I think this is a particularly helpful slide. It's a couple of cross sections through the site. So the section AA is like dissecting the Moorland Hall here and picking up the slope of the site. It's helpful also that it's got the outline of the buildings, the farm buildings behind, so you can see the relative heights. There's a photograph hopefully I'll show you in a minute as well, which I think helps with that. So try and hold this picture in mind, and I'll show you on the photographs roughly where the site extends to, but again, helpfully picking up the plots further into the site being single storey, to give a fairly sort of consistent level across. And then section BB here, that's, I guess, a section taken from the A396 and helps pick up dwellings behind. It's helpful, I think, having this terrace here address the road. Obviously, many properties within Welling Cross itself do face onto the road and address the road, and it picks up on the sort of the architectural detailing with some of the porches and chimneys, again, features which are common within the local building vernacular. That's that terrace facing onto the road in more detail. The actual road elevation is this section here, which has obviously a bit more detailing on it than the rear. But it's a mix of stone properties and render properties with slate roofs. That's the floor plan of those dwellings. The sort of bookend, the dwellings on either end would be 3-bedroom, and then the dwellings in between. Sorry, yeah, the 2 dwellings in between would be 2-bedroom. That's plot 5, that's a principal residence dwelling, a 4-bedroom dwelling there. And plot 6, another principal residence dwelling as you sort of come into the site. That's 4-bedroom. That's the floor plans for both those properties there. And then we move further into the site. So these are the dwellings, or some of the dwellings which back onto the farm buildings, the ones who are directly behind the Moorland Hall itself. Again with floor plans. These are the affordable dwellings. And plots 11 and 12. So next to the dwellings we've just seen, again back onto the farm buildings. Floor plans. And then the 3 single-storey dwellings set further into the site. So that's plot 13, 14 and 15. Again, slightly varying but also relating in terms of their vernacular materials. And that's the floor plans, and the red highlight really just picks up on the fact that these are accessible and adaptable dwellings as is required under planning policy. I think that was some of the garaging details. And then we move to the single site again, which we visited when we were on the site visit. We did start just on the edge of the public highway here, picked up the new access which would come through along the frontage of the existing bungalow there, which is known as Safe Corner, beside its garage and then into the site. We can see the relative relationship between the existing proposed dwellings in terms of the siting within the plot. Quite a bit of landscape planting proposed as part of that as well, with new hedge banks around all the boundaries. Just a bit more detail on that plan. Again, similarly here. And then again, I think a helpful section, picking up the height of the bungalow next door, so it does step down ever so slightly. It has an outbuilding proposed adjacent to it as well, which is seen just there. And that's just a detail of the elevations for the dwelling and the garage to the right-hand side. This one would be principally render, slate roofs, but again it responds to the existing use of materials and vernacular of buildings. Within the context of the site, it is a 2-bedroom dwelling as shown on the plan. It would have a floor area of about 119 square metres, okay, which is again similar to the mass or scale of the buildings set within this context. This is a photograph now taken from roughly from the point of the access into the larger site, looking obviously away from the Welling Cross direction, but picking up its visibility along the highway. And then the next photo is looking in the other direction, back towards the crossroads. That's that earth bank, which would come out with a new footpath provided along there, linking up to the T-junction here with a footpath alongside the junction, then leading into the site to the right-hand side of the photo. That stood from the access, roughly from the point of access, now looking into the site, so really just picking up the sloping nature of the site. But the plots 1 to 4 would be to the right-hand side of this photograph in here, and then you'd have plots 5 and 6 sort of facing you as you're coming into the site before the road passes round to the left towards the other buildings. That's further into the site now, so looking at that gateway back towards the A396. Attenuation pond would actually be further to the left of the cursor there, with the plots 1 to 4 roughly in that area. So that's looking along the back of Moorland Hall there, picking up the farm buildings. So we know from those the layout plans that the dwellings would then be leading up the hillside, with the farm building providing the backdrop to those plots. Let's move further into the site, so obviously Moorland Hall here, access coming in through around here, site, the road comes up through, and then we've got dwellings to the right hand side and to the left hand side at this point. Slightly wider shot, again picking the context of farm buildings, but one thing when we're looking at the section drawn beforehand, I just asked members to try and hold that in mind. I think what's particularly helpful here is, we saw the relative heights of these buildings here, but in the wider context, we've got two-storey dwellings, again sat at a sort of similar sort of contour within the wider settlement. And I think that's particularly important here in terms of how this scheme would relate to the wider settlement in the context of that and its built form. Again, that's just picking up. So the dwellings would the single-storey dwellings would be up here at this point, but again, we've got the context of those other buildings. That's particularly important because this site would be visible from Dunkery Beacon. Wellham Cross is visible, but these would be viewed in the context of the existing settlement, and crucially from those long-distance views with the ground sort of rising behind. So this is now to the single plot site. That's the bungalow stay corner. So the proposed new dwelling would be provided with access roughly through that wall there. It would come this side of the garage, but to the far side of the bank. So we'll see a photograph in a minute. Looking down through here, the access would come through and then return, and the dwelling would be sat in behind this garage on that plot of land. Again, I think we looked at that section a moment ago. We know the new bungalow is going to be set slightly below the height of that building. So that's where the access would come through this wall, below the bottom of the garage, and then into the right hand side here. Again, wider context of bungalows in built form in relation to the site itself. That's where the access would go through between the hedge and the garage. And that's looking up into the site again, which is a sloping site. That's a view from within the site, looking out, so we can see the neighbouring properties. Say one in here, opposite side of the road, and obviously to the left hand side. So Chairman, that's just an aerial view with the layout plans to the right hand side. I think just again to set it in context, but we're talking about this roughly sort of fenced area in here. That's the corner, new access coming through with the dwelling. That's in this position here. Again, we can clearly see the context of the wider buildings here, and obviously below it here, it's almost sort of rounding off the end of that row of dwellings there. And a similar view in relation to the larger site. Again, we're talking about this area of the field here. If I go around that, say with the cursor, roughly down through here, backdrop of farm buildings, and then in here, that's the bit we're dealing with. That's the layout plan. This section of the field here, this sort of rough triangle here, wouldn't be built on. That's the higher part of the site, but that is actually helpful in terms of being able to deliver the biodiversity net gain which is required by development. It's not solely reliant on that element. There is quite a bit of additional landscape planting within the site as well, particularly on the back of the moorland, but also to the boundaries itself, and naturally within the attenuation pond, which would be down this corner here. Oh, I don't need to get to that yet. Right, Chairman, it's really for me to say that the report does outline the main planning consideration. It then analyses them and considers these against the planning policy, so I don't need to repeat that here this morning. The planning balance within that report finds the benefits of the scheme mean that it is acceptable and that planning permission should be granted, and that's the recommendation. Having said that, we have, since drafting the committee report, received late comments from Natural England. They are of consequence. Natural England do not object to the proposal, provided all mitigation measures are secured and approved by the authorities, ecologists, okay, but they have advised the authority is required to carry out habitat regulation appropriate assessment. Okay, so that's something we need to do. So I need to say that, in other words, despite what is set out in the OSA report, we are not ruling out that this scheme would not risk a significant effect on the integrity of the habitat site, okay, which is, they are referred to in the report, large in relation to the Barbastell bat population, which could frequent this area, and it's mainly in relation to potential impact from artificial lighting. Okay, so as an update to the report and the recommendation, officers are recommending that planning permission be approved, subject to the Section 106 agreement, which is outlined in the report, and subject to the planning conditions bar condition 6, which I'll get on to, which are set out on page 58 of the report. But, and this is the crucial change to the recommendation, also subject to the favourable outcome of a habitat regulation assessment, appropriate assessment, in consultation with Natural England. Okay, so that's a process we need to go through, but there, with the section 106, we're able to do that within the time set out ahead. And relating to what we anticipate would be an outcome of the habitat, or the appropriate assessment, officers are proposing an amendment to condition 6, which is set out in the report. The amended wording set out in front of you, the crucial amendment is to include that the lighting strategy also show the effects of internal lighting from proposed dwellings. Okay, lighting on the site is probably quite apt to touch on this point. Is the scheme is proposed without any street lighting. Okay, so that's really helpful. We don't want to have a lit up development on the edges of the settlement. It is within the dark area. It's not within the core or the buffer zone, but it is within the dark sky reserve. No external lighting, but we want to be very careful about any artificial lighting within the spots. And this condition would then deal with that to ensure that any lighting that goes within the development would have an acceptable impact. Okay, so with that recommendation, Chairman, officers are satisfied that planning permission should be granted, but it would then be subject to the section 106 as set out and the appropriate assessment.
Thank you, Mr. White. So just to be absolutely clear, the recommendation needs to have added to it that it's also subject to a habitat appropriate assessment.
That's correct, Chairman.
And the condition 6 also needs to be amended so that it includes a lighting strategy to show the effect of internal lighting.
That's correct.
Right. Amendment's got that. Yep. Thank you. In that case, we will move to our public speakers, and I think we've only got 2 this afternoon. So we'll begin with Mr. Norman, who is the chairman of Cuckton Parish Council. Mr. Norman, if you come to the desk and just check that the microphone is on, and you will then have 2 minutes from when you start to speak.
What do you turn for?
Is it on? Okay. Could you just bear with us a second, Mr. Norman, because Ms. Callister has forgotten to bring in the timer, so we need to make sure that you're keeping...
Can you hear me?
Yes, can you just wait for 2 seconds? We're just waiting for the timer to come. We have a timer at the moment, which is really for the benefit as much of the speaker as the chairman, so we need the beeper. Okay, Mr. Norman, so you have 2 minutes from when you start to speak.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I speak as Chairman of Cuckton Parish Council. The parish supports the application but has grave reservations about site traffic. We have consistently said there needs to be a very robust site construction management plan which ensures no site traffic will park on the village lanes or the pub car park without exception, and to include lorries waiting to load or unload at and site visitors. We are concerned that this village, a crucial centre of Exmoor for tourism, does not become a building site for 2 years or more. It will impact adversely on nearby business such as Exmoor House B&B, whose business will suffer from site traffic and noise because visitors to Exmoor National Park expect peace, quiet in this beautiful and idyllic part of England. Therefore, off-road site and workers' parking must be thoroughly well planned and categorically not left to the discretion of the site manager. There are further major concerns about mud and dust on the highway, which again impacts on road safety, which is paramount to our roads on Exmoor, where we already have problems with speeding traffic. Therefore, mud and dust must be managed on a daily basis to avoid any build-up of debris. Once the site is completed, there will be parked cars from the residents and the recycling vehicles will not be able to turn round and will have to back out onto the highway. The Snowdrop Valley annual month-long event is an important tourism driver, bringing thousands of visitors from afar, boosting the local economy, and will be adversely affected by site traffic, noise and mud, etc. Though most of Cockham residents support the application, they do not want to live in a building site for 2 years, especially as the site includes a secondary location for 600 metres between the school and the church. I strongly urge members of the Planning Committee to give thought to these of our concerns.
Thank you very much, Mr. Norwood. Thank you. And our second speaker is Mr. Winter, who is the applicant. Again, Mr. Winter, you will have 2 minutes from when you start to speak.
Can you hear me? Okay. Mr. Chairman, Planning Committee members, bit of background to the application. The Council and the National Park Housing Enablers identified a need for affordable homes and principal residence homes across the park. However, the challenges to delivering new homes in the park are unique, in part due to planning policy, land availability and financial viability. After meeting various employers and interest groups, it became apparent that there is a housing need beyond that the housing need identified. Businesses were struggling to recruit staff because there was a shortage of all types of homes in the park, and any homes that come to the market are often bought at inflated prices as second and holiday homes. Dunkery View landowner Roger Webber has been determined to bring development forward to deliver homes for local people, and has been doing this with this site for 10 years. Working initially with Live West and then with ourselves, we have partnered with Hastow Housing, and with support from Homes England now have the ability to deliver a viable development that goes some way to meeting local housing need. There is no doubt that we have a housing crisis, and there's a general appreciation that we need more new homes, particularly affordable homes. From our engagement and consultation during the preparation of this application, there has been a desire for these to be delivered in smaller quantities and spread across the park. This, however, is a challenge, and has constantly been a challenge. It's too small for most developers to be interested, management intensive, trying to deliver 4 or 5 micro projects, and finding the right sites and landowners who will gift the land. The site at Dunkery View, whilst technically challenging as a location, can deliver, as Joe said, 6 social rented homes, which will be 2 and 3 bed homes and 1 bed flats, 3 discounted 2 and 3 bed homes being sold at 60% of market value, all for local people, and 7 principal residence homes offering a mix of smaller and larger family homes and bungalows. I'll stop there and urge you to support this application.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Winter. That's very good, thank you. Just before we open it up to member debate, I wonder if I could ask Mr. White to comment on condition 28, which relates specifically to the construction management plan, bearing in mind Mr. Moore was raising the concerns of the parish on that subject.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. It's perhaps worth start by saying that the High Engineer for the Highway Authority has obviously carefully examined the application, and they raised no objections subject to conditions. One of those conditions does include a construction management plan, and that is, as the Chairman said, is on page 66 of the papers, condition 28, and it does require the developer to provide us with, and the local planning authority to agree, certain measures to be in place for the construction period. It does include elements such as agreeing people parking with vehicles, site operators and visitors. It looks at routes for construction traffic, methods of preventing mud being carried onto the highway. Essentially, for this scale of development, it's a pretty standard condition. I'm pretty sure the developer would be used to working with these types of conditions, and we can expect details to be submitted accordingly. But in agreeing those details, the developer then would be, if you like, committing to carrying out what is agreed to ensure that it has as little impact as possible. I mean, ultimately, it is a development site. There will be disruption locally, but again, importantly, it would be a temporary impact, and I think it's impossible to avoid some disruption, it's about mitigating that as much as possible through the condition. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, members, your comments and thoughts, please. Mr. Ross?
Yeah, I can kick us off. I think, first of all, to say, actually to commend the officers on a report on what could be a complicated set of facts and information to convey. I thought it was really well put together. I find it really helpful to understand what was being proposed here. I think the other point to make is that what it illustrates actually is with this particular mix of different types of housing, if it's done in the right way, is able to actually allow the policy to flex somewhat on the 93 square metre limit in certain circumstances when it's bundled together in aggregate with other things. That's something that I think is also a really important message for this. So that I find very interesting. And just one quick small point I just want to make, which is regarding the issue around the historic environment and archaeology on page 5. There's reference here to the requirement for a written scheme of investigation in line with paragraph 211 of the NPPF. I think that's the older one. I think it's actually paragraph 218 now. And in fact, in the conditions you refer to paragraph 218 rather than 211. So, but nonetheless, what that paragraph says, I'm sorry, I'm just accessing my notes here on my device, if you excuse me, is that local planning authorities should require developers to record in advance understanding of the significance of any heritage assets to be lost, wholly or in part, in a manner proportionate to their importance and the impact, and to make this evidence in any archive generated publicly accessible. From what I understand from reading the whole section of the NPPF, what that means is that this would mean that this is already either a heritage asset or is already in the historic environmental record, or that there is some indication that there would be heritage assets lost, and also that the condition that we're applying here is proportionate to the value of those assets. Now, in the report, it doesn't really mention that, and it doesn't indicate why, in this particular case, we're requiring that condition. So that was just something I thought would be helpful to have some clarification on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. White, would you like to give the clarification?
Sorry, yeah, I was just trying to read the report. It is dealt with in the report, Chairman, on page 55, in so much as it explains why that condition might come about. The site is, having consulted with our historic environment experts, does have some potential for historic value, their archaeological value, and that's where the condition has come from. It's important that the reference to the NPPF in the condition is correct. I think the reference beforehand was from a consultee, so that has been corrected. But I think locally there has been some archaeological significance identified. There's been nothing on this site to rule that out, hence why the condition's on there. It is a condition, all the conditions actually as draft conditions have been discussed with the developer, so I'm not expecting any particular issue from the developer's perspective, but the site has some potential for significance, and given the scale of it, the condition was felt reasonable in the context of National Park.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it says that the surveys that were done would suggest the sites are of low archaeological potential, and therefore I was coming back to that paragraph 218 in the NPPF, which of course this idea of proportionality, of ensuring that therefore, in the light of low archaeological potential, that we're not imposing a condition that is disproportionate to that potential. But from what you've said, if the developer hasn't got objections, no one's happy to do it, then that's fine. It's just useful for maybe other
Indeed, and I think what the report makes clear is that although initial assessment suggestions it is of low possibilities, nonetheless the baseline for this area has only been tested once, and the survival of unknown and anticipated archaeological remains cannot be ruled out.
We don't actually do. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bray.
Responding to what Dominic said, I think the report's very good, and I think the site visit was excellent. It is a significant development for Exmoor. The report says that it's not a major one. I'll come on back to that point. So the number of areas I want to pick up on. First, I just want to talk about strategic level. Is this right for Exmoor? Is this right for Wedding Cross? And then is this the right mix of development? And then I'll ask a couple of questions before I go on to the construction phasing. So the report obviously sets out the housing needs survey, the rural housing enabler, Exmoor Society. Most local people would recognise the need for housing in Exmoor. I think that's very clear. We've heard some people suggest that they've struggled to demonstrate that elsewhere, and I've sensed some frustration on that. But I think we can see from the report there's a need for it on Exmoor. Then the next question in my mind, where's the right place? And I think Wedding Cross, there's a school there, there's a post office, there's a shop, there's a pub. I think it's one of the biggest employers in Exmoor there. And there's a number of job opportunities there. I know people travel from Minehead to Wedding Cross to work, so in that sense, it is a working community, which is what we should try and do. And as a national park, we're there to support economic and social well-being. So, in that sense, Wedding Cross is probably the right place. Winsford, for example, may not be. No debate altogether. So, I'm comfortable with those two factors, and I think a lot of people would be. Then on to the development mix. We know we've got a challenge on Exmoor, shortage of houses, the right price. And I think the mix has done that very well. The local affordable, there's 3 which can be purchased, the 6 which can be rented out, and then the principal residence. I've got a question on that in terms of, and the first thing is to talk through, Joe, how we actually make sure we enforce the principal residence. I know we can ask, I assume, electoral register, we can ask for utility bills, I believe, GP records to prove that that's a principal residence. If you can come back, I'll come back to that point. I think that the affordable is sorted by itself. The purchase of buying a property is going to check there's a discount, that's going to look after itself. The other point, can someone buy one of those local affordable houses and then rent them out? Just a point.
It's the occupancy rather than the ownership, I think.
Okay, yeah, I'll come back to that. And then the other point, so that's 2 just points to pick up on. But the next one is, going back to some of the concerns I sensed during the site visit, was this split site. One site on its own and the main development together. I think, Joe, you explained very well, there's nothing wrong in that from a policy sense, and it may set precedents, but that's not a problem in its own right. But my thought is, and you did mention this during the site visit, and I'd be appreciative if you could talk this through a bit more, and I assume it's the section 105 will deal with this, is the phasing. In the worst possible scenario, we start work at Cuckham, or the applicant start works at the Cuckham bungalow, runs out of money for whatever reason, and nothing else gets built. I'm sure that won't happen, but I just want to know how we would cover that off using section 106 to make sure that's correct. So I'll leave you the answer to those few questions, Joe.
Right, Mr. White.
Thanks, Chairman. Just checking the relevant conditions. So, the really important points, and I think the first point was around the principal.
Yes, just how do we enforce that?
So, a condition, a recommended condition, those listed in the report is that the occupancy of those principal residence dwellings would be controlled by condition. It's a pretty standard thing for a lot of the principal residence dwellings we have within the National Park. That's no different to an agricultural condition or any other form of control on the occupancy of the dwelling. So the condition there would be enforceable, and we would be able to, if we needed to, want us to check what have you.
How do we enforce that?
So if someone's in breach of it, we would be able to
check it
that.
first. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's
Do we literally go knock on the door? Legally enforceable.
I mean, well, I think we'd have to have cause to think they weren't living there as their main dwelling. Okay,
yeah.
And if there was some evidence they weren't be, then we would investigate it. If it's found to be in breach, then we could take formal action.
Okay.
Okay, so we would be able to address that, and that would be controlled through a condition of planning permission. Comment around the discount sale, whether anyone could buy that. Ultimately, the section 106 would deal with the tenure of the affordable dwellings, so say 6 would be social rent properties, and they would be controlled by a registered provider. 3 would be the discounted sale dwellings. The section 106 would, they would be sold at a discount from open market, okay? The people occupying it would have to be in local affordable housing need. If someone wanted to buy that in the first instance, okay, to rent it out, they probably would need to be looking at varying the section 106 agreement to allow a substitute to that agreement to allow it to be private rented locally affordable dwelling. But it could happen, but ultimately the section 106 would protect that as a locally affordable dwelling in perpetuity. Okay, the tenure could change, but then that would be an element to be considered through the section 106. Phasing is another key. element of the scheme. Okay, the report recommends that that's dealt with through Section 26. We've not bottomed out how that may happen appropriately. Absolutely, what this scheme is about is delivering local and affordable housing. We don't want a scheme to come forward which just delivers principal residence and no local and affordable housing. But the phasing of that, how that happens when some come about, would need to be agreed with the developer through Section 106. But we will be delivering affordable housing. Okay, you won't be delivering just principal resident housing. Affordable housing would need to come forward. Okay, before those principal residents are done. Here you could look at a mix. It might not be you've got to do all the affordables first.
Yep.
But there would be an element of phasing within that to ensure we are delivering the houses that's needed, what the scheme is set to do.
Yeah. Okay. Can I carry on? And where it says no work in progress or no any development, that will mean no work at Cuckham and because it's one development, isn't it? Yes. So just going on, I think we've heard some of the concerns about the construction phase in the parking, and construction management plan will pick up on that. It's going to be a really important document, and I presume that will be open to the public afterwards in terms of parish council to see. And I'm confident someone like yourself will do a good job at that. I'm also confident. I've worked on many construction sites in city centres, in Cotswolds, where mud on the road as a contractor, you just don't do it because one, the police can come in and close the site down. And it's a large enough development, I think, to be able to afford to have a road sweeper involved. So I think that will be self-policing. And of course, this morning I drove across mud on a road with a tractor coming out of Gateway. So we've got to be a bit careful, I think, with local residents, that they shout too much about that because all the local farmers will get called out. So I'm comfortable that what the construction management plan will deal with that. The other concerns, I will mention them, but was about the sewage connection, but I think you've dealt with that. It was raised, and I've just read the report again. We consulted with Wessex Water on that. The attenuation pond, there was concern on the ongoing maintenance of that, and the developer said there'll be a management agreement on that, and that's built in.
So you're referring to the site visit when this was stated at the site visit?
Yes, sorry, yes, sorry. Yeah. So Joe referred during the site visit that the developer mentioned actually in the site visit, wasn't it, that there'd be a management plan because there was concern raised of the ongoing maintenance of the silting of the attenuation pond. Is that just the word of the developer, or was that something we picked up on?
Chairman, it's pretty standard practice.
Yeah.
Development schemes now have their, how they manage surface water attenuation ponds. They are very often, green spaces are very often managed by a management company, and utility bodies are pretty reluctant to adopt those anymore. But there are, again, a number of conditions within the report which come from the advice of the Legal Local Flood Authority, who are the experts on that element there. I was just trying to run through and find the relevant policy. It's not quite condition 24, sorry, relevant condition, but there is a condition which says that should be agreed in any case. Okay, 22, that no development approved by this permission shall be occupied in tourist use to the plan for future responsibilities and maintenance of the social drainage system. So that will be we
No occupation, yes.
resolve as a matter of course as things progress.
Good. I think that's being done. Nearly there, that's all right, Chairman. And moving on to my next thought was the visual impact of it. And the site visit was very helpful because of the sloping nature. The taller house at the front and the shorter ones at the back. Well, to me, the visual impact is going to be greatly reduced as a result. And I almost anticipate the hedge line would be the skyline at the back of it. So I think that's been very good how we've managed to get the developers put that forward. I'm not too sure, but that's worked out that way, and that seems very good. The biodiversity, environmental impact has been dealt with very well. So I think there are a lot of concerns, but I think it's been dealt with quite well.
Right, thank you, Mr. Gray. Next speaker, please. Right, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I think Andrew went through quite good reasoning behind that why put it at Wedding, why this development should be at Wedding Cross, and I think that I agree with all of that, and it's good to see these properties coming forward. Could you just explain to me the local connection and how wide that local connection is? Is it the whole of Exmoor, or is it certain villages close to Wedden Cross? I don't know if I saw that in the report. Could you just explain that a little bit to me, please?
Chairman, yes. I mean, in the first instance, essentially, it's the parish or adjoining parish, a 10-year connection. It will cascade out if it isn't, if the people meeting that criteria aren't found. But it's essentially the local connection criteria which is within our local plan.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back and say that I am supportive of this development, and it's good to see a reasonable amount of mixed tenure for Exmoor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Right, Miss Stacey and then Mrs. Nicholson.
Thank you, Chairman. I attended the site visit and I found it very enlightening. It was very helpful, and most of the points I would have raised have been raised by Andrew. Thank you. But I just sort of draw members' attention to the fact that we have 34 conditions. It's very unusual for a planning commission to be granted with quite so many conditions, and I do think this indicates how much credence has been given to remarks made by local people and also our sort of statutory consultees. And provided those conditions are adhered to, then I'm very happy to support this application.
Thank you, Miss Stacey. Mrs. Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was very helpful to go to the site visit on Friday. It's been very helpful this afternoon to hear the thoughts and reflections of members, most of whom were at the site visit. I absolutely support, in the right place, the provision of affordable and local needs housing. I think there is a particular thing here for me, is that I do believe there is a wider housing need on Exmoor, and a mixed development actually in delivering the affordable housing is actually a good thing and an advantage. And on that basis, I'm happy to propose the officer recommendation.
Right, thank you. So, proposed by Mrs. Nicholson, is that seconded by Miss Stacey? Okay, thank you. Dr. Kelly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a very thorough report. The site inspection was extremely useful, so thank you for that opportunity. I think most of the issues have been thoroughly aired. I had some concerns about the fragmented nature of the application site, but there is a term in planning which is called an inchoate application, where planning authorities should ask, ideally, for the different parts of an application to be submitted as one application rather than 2 or 3 applications coming in. So it's quite right to have looked at it together. In terms of the viability argument, I did go back to Mr. White yesterday, and I'm satisfied with the points raised, so thank you for those responses. That's most helpful. Construction management plan condition is well rehearsed. I see it in many decisions. The wording is a model wording, and it is fit for purpose. And indeed, I've read several appeal decisions where concerns regarding construction management have been raised, and the inspectorate every time have relied on that condition. So I'm confident that can be looked after properly. Those are the main issues. In terms of the conditions, the number of conditions, yes, there are several. I've dealt with applications with many more than that, but it is proportionate. Those conditions are necessary. And if they've been agreed with the developer, that doesn't make them necessarily correct, but nonetheless, having gone through them, they do seem to be reasonable. So I'm quite happy to vote for approval of this. I wasn't to move it myself, but it's already been put forward. So on that basis, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to support the application.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kelly. Does anybody else wish to speak, please? Right, well, it's been proposed and seconded, proposed by Mrs. Nicholson, seconded by Miss Stacey, that we approve. Can I just clarify that we are also including within that recommendation that it should also be subject to a habitat appropriate assessment, and that condition 6 is amended to require a lighting strategy to deal with the effect of internal lighting.
Yes,
Happy with that?
Mm.
Okay. So if there's no further debate, ladies and gentlemen, may I see all those in favour, please? That is passed and con. Thank you very much. We'll take a 2-minute pause there if those members that were here, members of the public that were here to listen to that item have to withdraw. Or you're very welcome to stay and run through the rest of the agenda. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll move on to item 7.2, which is 643-25002, proposed siting of 2 temporary timber cabins for use as holiday accommodation, together with associated landscaping and installation of a shower room in the existing stable building. This is at West Hollow, Coombe, Broad Lane, Hawkridge, Darlington, Somerset, and this is going to be presented by Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Chair. Here is the location plan. The site is located within the parish of Withypool and Hawkridge. And here is a further location plan of the site showing in a bit more detail the applicant's land ownership boundary in blue. Here are the existing and proposed site plans. You can see on the right the proposed positioning of the 2 cabins and the stable of which is proposed to include a shower room and bicycle store. And here is also an aerial site plan just for a bit more further visual context. Now onto the floor and elevation drawings, starting with cabin number 1's proposed floor and roof plans. If any members would like me to go back to any of these during the discussions, then please do say. Then it's proposed front and rear elevations. It's worth noting that both units are proposed to be timber clad with flat bitumen roofs and would include timber framed windows and doors, and the units would also be positioned on a portable chassis. These units also propose elevated timber decking set to align with the finished floor level of the unit and affixed to the ground by timber posts. So here are the side elevations. Now on to cabin 2, starting with its proposed floor and roof plans. These drawings show the front and rear elevations. I do note that they are labelled as front and side elevations on the drawing, which I assume to be just a minor labelling error. And now it's proposed side elevations. Finally, the existing and proposed stable plans are provided, illustrating the proposed alterations. These include the omission of 1 stable door and its replacement with a full height door, the installation of a shower room and the provision of a bicycle store. Now onto the site photographs. On the left you can see the proposed site for cabin number 1 and on the left side for cabin number 2. And here is a stable building which is proposed to include the provision of a shower and bicycle store. Just for context, aside from the removal of the single stable door in the middle of the photo on the right, with a full length door, there are no other external alterations proposed in respect of that building. Here are some photographs to show the surrounding landscape character, as well as a couple of photographs found online, again in terms of the wider landscape character. The arrows in this photograph show the proposed location of the 2 units proposed. The key considerations in this case relate to the principle of development, site and design and landscape impacts, neighbouring amenity and ecology and biodiversity, as set out within the officer's report. Whilst all of these matters have been considered, officers' concerns are focused specifically on the design and landscape impact of the proposal. The proposed units are of quite a boxy form with large window openings, associated decking and a bitumen flat roofs. Officers consider that this design does not reflect the local vernacular, nor does it conserve or enhance character and appearance of the area. As such, it fails to achieve high quality design, contrary to clause 1D specifically of policy RTD9, and as such, officers recommend that planning permission be refused on that basis. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Rose. So we have 2 speakers on this item. The first of whom is Mrs. Holly Ford, who is the agent. You'll have 2 minutes from when you start to speak, Mrs. Ford.
Is it on? Yeah? Okay. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. West Hollycombe Farm is a long-established rural holiday business that has operated successfully within Exmoor National Park for many years. Like many small rural enterprises, it now needs to diversify to remain viable in an increasingly challenging economic climate. The proposal before you is the 2 small, low-impact, removable glamping huts on wheels. One replaces an existing disused barn which will be dismantled, and the second is located on the edge of the farmhouse garden, partially screened by established hedgerows. Both units are fully reversible, built on wheels and designed to sit sensitively within the landscape. The planning history is important here. The original application proposed a barn conversion and a second glamping unit located further from the farm. Following advice from both the original planning officer and the parish council, that application was withdrawn. A revised proposal was developed collaboratively, including an on-site meeting with the parish council. The application before you today was resubmitted in line with the advice and has been formally supported by the parish council. Throughout this process, no objections have been raised to the design by either the original planning or landscape officers. The landscape officer queries the height, however the internal height is below 3 metres and fully compliant with the Caravan Act. Design concerns have only been raised very recently by a new case officer covering during leave. While we respect professional judgment, these concerns are subjective, and the current proposal reflects the previous advice from the original officer and the parish council. The huts are single-storey, flat-roofed and modest in scale, with each having an internal floor area of 23.7 square metres, below the threshold set out in policy RTD9. Their overall footprint is also smaller than that of the existing disused barn by around 6.6 square metres. Off-site construction will minimise disturbance, and the use of synthetic materials, including untreated timber and simple metal roofing, materials that are used regularly in wider rural landscapes, allows the huts to blend sensitively into the landscape. All facilities are provided in the existing barn, and the proposal will deliver significant ecological enhancements. Their location, temporary nature, ensure the proposal conserves landscape character in line with policies CES1 and CED1. In summary, this is a carefully considered, policy-compliant proposal, shaped and supported by the Parish Council and designed to sit sensitively within its setting. We respectfully ask members to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ford. And our final speaker on this item is Mr. Adams, who is the applicant. Mr. Adams, if you come to the desk, you will have 2 minutes when you start to speak.
Thank you, members of the committee. I'm speaking on behalf of West Hollycombe Farm. Our farm's been a long-standing part of this community for many years, supporting local employment, local suppliers and contributing to the rural economy of Exmoor. We are not a new or speculative enterprise, we are an established working business that has grown carefully and responsibly alongside the community. The proposal before you today is for 2 very small-scale huts. They're not large developments, but a modest and considered form of diversification. National Park guidance, as well as wider rural policy, recognises that diversification is essential if rural businesses are to remain viable, particularly in the current economic climate. Indeed, other accommodation providers within the park have been allowed to expand in the way that we seek to. Importantly, visitors staying locally bring real and tangible benefits to the wider community. Guests use local pubs, cafes, restaurants, village shops, post offices, and support the local visitor attractions and activity providers. Visiting them puts tourist spend at £72 per tourist per day, and this spend is critical to the viability of rural services that are already under pressure. Crucially, this type of low-impact, experience-led tourism does not follow the same sharp seasonal peaks and troughs as more traditional accommodation does. It attracts visitors throughout the year, helping to spread economic activity beyond the main holiday season. This provides a more consistent year-round custom that local businesses and supports employment and services on a more sustainable basis. This form of accommodation is exactly the sort encouraged within the National Park. It attracts visitors who value the landscape, contributes to its stewardship, and delivers economic benefit without harming the character of the area. In practical terms, this proposal would increase our economic contribution by approximately £63,000 per annum and support additional local employment, including an increase in full-time roles. This means more local jobs, greater use of local trades and suppliers, and more money circulating within the economy. I'd also like to stress that we work closely and constructively with the planning process. We have followed all guidance provided by the planning officer, engaged openly with the parish council, and welcome councillors on site to collaborate and ensure the proposal responds appropriately to local concerns. It's a carefully considered, small-scale proposal and supports the long-term sustainability of an established local business. I hope that you can support this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. Thank you very much. Members. Mr. Olsen.
Okay, me again. Do you have... sorry, this seems to turn on RCD9, and particular paragraph 1D, that they are of high quality, sustainable design and demonstrate that the siting and landscaping strongly relate to the landscape and historic character of the area. And the comment that's been said was that these were not of high quality building materials. That seemed to be the issue here. Do we have like a sort of artist impression or something that would really illustrate that from the sketches? We have got plans, I can see. Can you just back up a little bit on the pictures just so I can see? So we've got this. So I suppose what I'm struggling to understand, because it seems to rest upon this, because in all other respects this appears, and I could be wrong unless there are other things I'm not taking into account, this appears to be compliant with policy in terms of, because we have a policy for alternative camping accommodation, or what is colloquially known as glamping. These are called glamping pods, aren't they? They're quite pods really, as they're on trailer on wheels, and it's what's pod-like about them, but nonetheless that's not really an issue here. So therefore, I suppose what I'm trying to really nail here is in what respects precisely, in a way that we could defend objectively, are these actually not of sufficient quality to comply with RTD9? Thank you.
Mr. Rose?
Yeah, so I think ultimately, in terms of what you mentioned about materials, obviously they are proposed to be timber clad, etc. And I think in terms of the actual choice of materials isn't necessarily the issue in respect of that. And obviously the windows and the doors as well are also proposed to be timber. So I think ultimately that element is okay. But I think I'll sort of draw back to the officer's report talks about them being sort of quite boxy in form with quite large window openings and being a fairly untraditional design in terms of, you know, when you look at things like more traditional shepherd's huts, for example. And I think ultimately that mixed with them having this sort of associated decking as well, I think all sort of adds to that design issue. And I think ultimately officers would sort of say that it is very much a design issue in terms of this proposal rather than in respect of any other issues on the site. I think it is ultimately their proposed design.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting, because that puts us in a bit of a bind, because we're now being invited to share your objective analysis of basically based on this diagram, that its materials, we said, actually isn't an issue, because you said it's timber clad, that's good. Traditional materials, good. Timber windows, excellent. And I suppose what's interesting for me is that, again, in the policy when we talk about alternative camping accommodation, I think I've always read that to mean that that was inviting the sense of something that is alternative. There's a word there, alternative, not the same as what we do before. And even shepherd's huts, I would question how local and vernacular shepherd's huts are in Exmoor. And so I think that there's a danger here that we're summoning a sort of an idea of what we think an alternative, what a glamping looks like in the Exmoor context, in a way that we've never actually truly defined, and therefore we don't really have a standard to compare this against. Which means that brings us back to basically the idea that it's boxy. Well, I would argue that if you look at those farm buildings in Exmoor, I would say that's absolutely in line with the vernacular of what most things get built in Exmoor. So boxiness doesn't seem to be a problem. So again, I think my problem for this at the moment is I'm just struggling to see, in the position we are where we're deciding in relation to this particular policy and this particular clause of this policy, I suppose I'm struggling to see how I can agree with that recommendation for refusal based upon the arguments presented so far. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mr. Olsen. Dr. Kelly.
Yes, it is an interesting one, but there's a simple question to answer. Does this development conserve or enhance the natural beauty of the Exmoor National Park? And I have to say, I'm not convinced that it does. It is a matter of subjective judgment, but any new design should be respectful to its context and landscape and its setting, and that is mentioned in the report. I suspect that we're not here to design anything different, we can only decide what's before us. But on that very simple test, do those enhance or conserve the natural beauty of the National Park? I'm not convinced that they do. Thank you.
Just picking up that point, bearing in mind that this is essentially part of a business, it's economic infrastructure, we would absolutely say that shouldn't harm the appearance. It's not always easy when you're actually looking at economic developments within the park to say that it enhances it. So just coming then back to the reasons that are given for refusal, design and appearance, well, as Mr. Olsen says, to some degree that can be subjective. At scale and height, however, less so. And the parish council have particularly picked up the issue of the height. So is there anything that we can work towards that might reduce the height and therefore make this application more acceptable? Dr. Kelly.
Just on that point, I think the applicant did say they've worked closely with the officers, so that's a very good point. I'd be interested in how far that discussion went and whether in fact there is the possibility of agreement is reached. Indeed. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. I'm going to take a little step back again, if I may. I mean, I think the applicant liaison spoke really well this morning in terms of the merits, the benefits of the scheme. Okay, that's largely what policy RCD 9 seeks to achieve. The difference, the dispute between us at the end of the day is a character appearance issue, which runs down to a design issue. Officers are concerned that the design actually doesn't sufficiently conserve the character appearance of what is a particularly attractive landscape. I think those photographs show that particularly well there. Really interestingly, that the Future Landscape Officer hasn't objected, nor has the Parish Council. The Parish Council actually going to support the application. But when you read their comments, they do raise concerns within those, which, if I'm honest, my take on that is we can do more here in terms of design. We can achieve all the benefits the scheme would deliver, but with a better design. And we will switch back to this. This is what we're charged with assessing. Absolutely, it's a planning judgment. Okay, so members in this room are free to exercise their planning judgment as to whether that is acceptable on the site. Officers have exercised their planning judgment and rationalised why they feel this isn't acceptable. I think with an acceptable design, we can get a planning permission here with a different type of glamping unit from the officer's perspectives. Okay. Ultimately, it comes down to, look, it is an element of a combination of issues and how they're packaged together. You know, it's like baking cake, and we chucked ingredients in, this has come out. I'd rather see the ingredients, apply slightly differently to get a different outcome, to achieve a positive outcome on it. But it is, it is a height issue. There is the issue about the decking as well, which accentuates the scale of those units. They have got large, okay, they may be timber, but they're not particularly vernacular on a form of box-like building or structure that we see before us there. It's a case of, in a national park context, a national park landscape, we expect better. We could achieve something better here. But again, it is a planning judgment from the officers, but it does relate to those comments that are raised by the landscape officer and the parish council. Okay, but it is ultimately a judgment in terms of looking at the context of the site. Again, I think I'll go back to that because I think they're really helpful photographs just showing the context and the building vernacular.
So it is worth saying then that elements of the scheme as originally proposed have now been usefully split apart, and part is now being accommodated within the former stables, with which there doesn't seem to be a problem. It comes back to the design, particularly the height of those cabins. Yes?
Yes, it's height and form.
Okay. Mr. Gray, and then Mrs. Nicholson, and then Mr. Hopkins.
Point of clarification, I've been looking at the RTD9. I mean, the boxing is almost a result of being on a trailer, isn't it? And it would strike me as being no proposal to put trees around that, which would soften it straight away. But so that's actually on a trailer to make it mobile. That's not a requirement of the policy. That's something put forward by the applicants if they want to move, I guess, in the winter and bring it back. Where I'm striking me that avoids to be able to put some trees around to soften it and makes it very boxy to be on a trailer. So is that a policy thing or is it a proposal?
Chairman, it's perhaps helpful just to point out clause E of the policy, which talks about them having a low environmental impact, and I think that's the response to that.
To make it mobile, right? Yeah. And therefore that would probably, putting trees around would be more impact on the environment, and therefore perhaps not.
Because you wouldn't be able to move them.
Well, they could move them, but the trees would remain. Yes, sorry, the trees could move the trees. Yes, yes, yeah.
Well, but it would potentially make it more difficult.
Permanent, yes.
Right. I've next got Mrs. Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a very helpful discussion. It clearly articulated that parts of the object of the exercise is an acceptable object of the exercise. That's the most important thing. That some elements of the application have been disarticulated and that is something which is helpful. Officers have said that they are quite sure that something could come forward that would work and achieve the objectives that we all want. How do we get to that point? What do we need to do to get us to that point? What are the potential ways forward?
Sorry, I had deferral was raised. I mean, the challenge we've got. I mean, say I don't know how sold the applicant is on the design of the units that's proposed. If they don't wish to explore a change, then deferring the application doesn't really help them. Okay, because it doesn't move them forward. Because if it's determined then it's not a favourable outcome, they have the right to appeal. We could determine the application today. It will go whichever way it goes. If it's unfavourable for the applicant, there's nothing to prevent discussions. I mean, ultimately, as I say, I think there is a way forward, but that would need to be discussed and agreed, wouldn't it? I mean, officers will picture in their mind what they think might be acceptable. It's difficult to tell whether an applicant would necessarily agree. But the options ultimately are the committee can determine the application today. That will go either one or two ways. the committee are free to defer the application, instruct officers to negotiate, and then, if necessary, bring it back. But it may be that, you know, if a favourable outcome can be achieved, members may be happy to see it delegated to officers.
Mrs Nicholson, do you want to come back?
Well, I wonder whether it would be, officers would welcome it, let alone the planning, I'm not at the moment asking the applicant because I can't, whether officers would welcome the opportunity for further discussions to see if it could come back at something that they were happier with, or whether they would feel this is not an appropriate way of doing it.
Shall I just take the next couple of speakers, and then maybe some thoughts might crystallise by then. Mr Hockley.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important that farms find other ways to get some income, and this is important. I can't see it making a great deal of difference on the look of that landscape, to be honest. If we're looking at aesthetics, then shepherd's huts usually just have a curved roof. There's not a lot of difference really, it's just a curved roof. So if it were just a question of a slight design change, would that help with the matter? And as regards to planting of trees, I think that is also a good idea. They don't have to be planted right around the units at all, so they could still be moved, but they could be appropriately placed to soften the views of that area. But I would be in full support for this with the conditions, if it was a case of just a design change, making it look like a shepherd hut, which is actually pleasing to the eye.
Okay. Right, thank you, Mr Hockley. That actually is very helpful. Mrs Smith.
Thank you. It's quite hard to visualise what this is going to look like from just that one drawing, because does this come pre-constructed? Is the issue because it comes pre-constructed? I mean, is it a shipping container? Is it a mobile home? And then we just clad it in wood, and therefore, you know, that makes it acceptable. So I do struggle with this one. I do think it's a good idea to have this as an addition to their existing business, but I'm not sure if this is quite the right thing. I mean, I really do struggle with just that drawing. I'd like a bit more information as to, I mean, are they going to build it on site, and what are they going to make it out of? I know it's going to be clad, but what is the existing building going to be? And then just hoist it up onto a trailer.
Dr Kelly.
I'm going to test the mood of the room here, Chair. I'm going to move that we defer this to seek an amended design, because I feel that we can achieve an amended design. No one's disagreeing with the business and case at all. It comes down to the impact on the appearance and character of the natural landscape, and we are under a requirement to ensure that we keep that to the forefront of our minds. And on that basis, I'm moving deferral to secure an amended design.
And potential landscaping?
Yes, indeed. Just in respect of trees, for example, to mature they take 15 years. So I don't think that's a panacea that we could rely on. So yes, indeed.
Right, so it's been proposed that we defer for further discussion about design and landscaping. Bearing in mind, I think everything that's been said so far has accepted the principle of the development and welcome the disaggregation of the original scheme. It is just the appearance and height and potential landscaping of the two units as proposed. So Dr Kelly is proposing that there should be a deferral for further discussion on design and landscaping. Is that seconded? That seems to be seconded round by a number of people. However, before we take a vote, I do feel that we need Mr White to comment on the proposal. No pressure.
I don't really have much comment, I don't think, Chairman. I mean, I'm happy with a deferral. I guess the question, from the officer's perspective, it is deferred. Would that read to allow a delegation to be achieved if officers can reach a position where they're happy with the design, or would the committee still wish that to come?
I think that if you can achieve a delegated decision, we'd be happy with that.
Definitely.
If you are unable to reach agreement, then at that point I think it would have to come back to the committee. But if you are able to reach agreement with the applicant, then I think members we would be happy with that. Are you happy with that, Dr. Kelly, as well, proposal? Okay. So the proposal is then that we defer for further discussion between officers and applicant regarding design and potential landscaping, and we will delegate the decision to officers if they are able to reach agreement, but request that it should return to this committee if they are not.
Yeah.
Right? May I see all those in favour of that, please? Good. Pass, no Conley, I think. Thank you very much. Okay. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we move on to the next item, 7.3, which is 6325009, proposed demolition of ruinous structure and erection of building for mixed-use agricultural and private storage at land south of Howell Lane, Brompton Regis. And this is going to be presented again by Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Chair. So here is the location plan for the site. It's located within the parish of Brompton Regis itself. And here is the further location plan showing a bit more detail of the applicant's land ownership boundary. Here are the existing and proposed site plans. You can see on the left the existing ruinous structure and on the right the new proposed building, as well as an area to the northeast of the site proposed for mixed scrub planting for purposes of biodiversity net gain. Here is an aerial site plan for a bit more visual context. And here is a proposed mixed-use agricultural and private storage building. It's worth noting that the building is proposed to be timber-clad with an anthracite grey fibre cement roof with grey roller shutter doors. Now moving on to the site photographs. Again, if members would like me to refer back to any of these, please just say. Here are some more photographs of the site. And again, it's worth noting here that the right-hand side photograph shows the proposed location for the mixed scrub planting for the purposes of biodiversity net gain, as opposed to being where the building is proposed. And here are some photos taken from Google Street View, just showing how Holnell Lane connects to the site entrance. So the key considerations in this case relate to the principle of the development, design and impact on the character and appearance of the landscape, as set out within the officer's report. Officer's concerns relate to the inclusion of a private storage for which a standalone building in the open countryside is contrary to policy HCD 16, which seeks to secure such facilities within the domestic curtilage of dwelling houses. In addition, officers are not satisfied insofar as the agricultural use, that a robust functional need has been demonstrated for a new isolated building on such a small parcel of land, which has been subdivided away from the former farm holding, which is considered contrary to policy SES 4. Officers note that whilst a ruinous structure does exist on the site, it's relatively unassuming in its current form, and would likely be materially less than that of the proposed development in this case. And as such, officers recommend that planning permission be refused for those reasons. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. There are two speakers on this item. The first of whom is Mrs. Beltink, who is a neighbour. Mrs. Beltink, if you could come to the microphone, please.
Thank you.
And you'll have 2 minutes from when you start to speak.
Thank you. My husband and I are the owners of the neighbouring farm, Dawes Farm. The parcel of land in question here is bordering our land and visible from our land and drive. The access to this plot of land and the track are in our ownership. From Mr. Veal's plot of land there is no direct access to the public road, However, we have granted him a right of way to use our gate and track to access it. The right of way is for agricultural use only, therefore not intended for recreational, commercial or other non-agricultural activities. The entrance and track cannot be blocked in any way because it's important to us for adequate functioning of the farm. Since it is of this nature, we are a bit concerned about it because of its visual impact in a landscape. The proposal is rather large, high and commercial looking in appearance. Should the intention ever exist or come up in the future, we would object to create hereafter a dwelling, a holiday home perhaps, or a holiday let or something like that in the future, or perhaps by an heir or a possible new owner. With this, we'd like to draw your attention to some of our other concerns. What also concerns us is our water supply. All our water, the house, the barns, the fields and the animals, depend on the natural runoff of the springs and the springs. The geographical location of the applicant's land is at the higher point of our land, and therefore any runoff would directly affect our water collection system. Should any pollution occur, say by oil spillages or something else, our main concern, of course, is the contamination of our water systems. However, we're confident that Mr. Veal would take care to prevent this. Should the park authority grant permission for a building in this location this time, and it isn't in the open countryside, so maybe slightly inappropriate, we would hope for a less high and more modest dimension, and perhaps with timber doors instead of the industrial-looking roller shutter doors. Thank you for allowing me to speak here today.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Elton.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is the applicant, Mr. Veal. And Mr. Veal, you may be reading out a statement, I believe, from your brother, but that is at your discretion. If you do, then you'll be given extra time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I wish to deviate a bit from the agenda item. I was very pleased to hear earlier on the word defer. There's been some things on the application that I wanted to resolve before today, but because of the Christmas shutdown of things, I wasn't able to. And some things that Joe has said, and Mrs. Veltink, I would like the chance to review what we're applying for. Would it therefore, I don't know if it's possible, to postpone or defer this judgment to another day?
Thank you, Mr. Veal. I mean, if that's what you're requesting, if you'd like to take your seat again, then members can debate whether or not to defer it. I'm taking it that you're asking for a deferral on the basis that you would wish to revisit the precise nature of the application and possibly the design as well, so that it can be resolved as quickly as possible and represented to the committee at the earliest possible date?
Correct.
Right. In that case, Mr. Veal, if you'd like to resume your seat. Thank you very much. Members, I think my view from the chair would be that if that is the applicant's wish, and bearing in mind that I think there are, listening to Mr. Rose, there are concerns about the potential mixed use of this application. That is a particular policy concern. There are obviously other things about the design that can be addressed as well. It would seem to me to make sense for this deferral to be accepted this afternoon. And I think I'd like to propose that from the chair. Are all members, thank you, that's seconded by Mrs. Smith. Are all members happy to do that? Sure. Right. In that case, ladies and gentlemen, that item will stand deferred to come back at the earliest opportunity. Mrs. Nicholson, I'm sorry, did you want to say anything?
That's fine. I was merely going to say this, that the one thing that I think would be a waste of all our wit, that we really ought not to do, is to determine an application that an applicant wishes to defer.
indeed. Clearly, I think a deferral is appropriate rather than a withdrawal at this stage, because I think there may be room for negotiation and discussion here. I don't want us to make a habit, ladies and gentlemen, of deferring every item, but nevertheless, we happen to have had two where I think it's beneficial to do that. So, thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Veltink and Mr. Veal, for coming this afternoon, and hopefully what you have said will be able to be taken into account now, further negotiation with the officers. Okay? Thank you very much. Does somebody have a phone that it would be I think that ought to get standards.
It's £5 for charity in children's schools.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Veal.
Thank you.
And the final application for us to deal with this afternoon is 6/13/25/007, application under Regulation 3 of the Town and Country Planning General Regulations 1992 for the proposed demolition and replacement of an existing storage shed at the Exmoor depot. Mr. White.
Thank you, Chairman. Look, this application is done before the committee because it's the Exmoor National Park Authority who is the applicant. It relates to the Exmoor depot site, which is, as you might expect, in Exmoor, next to the car park. The proposal is to replace this building in the rear of the site, roughly an L-shaped building. It's currently an existing storage building, timber clad. Quite a straightforward proposal in that it would replace it on the same footprint. Sorry, as you just mentioned, the aerial photograph there shows that's the building in here. There is a context of some residential neighbours up here, but otherwise it's all of the industrial character of the site. That's the existing layout. I'll split the proposed layout in it, just so you can see a very minor difference. It would be on largely the same footprint, but you'll see when I change the next slide, at this point here, where there's that step, the new proposal would take that straight along. Okay, otherwise it's the same footprint. Okay, so it's slightly smaller in that regard, still timber clad, but it does go slightly taller. It's 300 millimetres taller at the front here, and that's for operational reasons, so they can get the forklift truck into the building, but the use would stay the same. So a quick flip, there we go. Okay, back. So you can just see slightly grows in terms of its height, and the footprint, is then regular in the proposed scheme. Onto the photographs, that's the front of the building here behind the Land Rovers, so in essence looks similar but obviously refreshed. And slightly higher on that part there. This is the side and the rear, so it is cut into the site, I think, which certainly helps. You can see the residential neighbours in the background, so they are set away and above, which is helpful, but nonetheless the use is staying the same. That's again the frontage with some of the doors open, so it would look very similar, timber clad and a metal clad roof. Seems to exist, and that's it, Chairman. So the report for members sets out the main planning considerations to consider those. Obviously comes to the recommendation at the end. The scheme is acceptable, so the officers are proposing to be approved subject to conditions which are on pages 6 and 7.
Don't propose that we defer it, Mr. Mr. Allicott.
Not working.
Oh, it's on. Yeah, press the button.
Yes, I'd just like to say right from the word go that being chairman of the Parish Council at Exford, when it came to the council, I declared an interest and didn't take part in the discussion, being a member here. So that clears up that point. But looking at it myself, as a member, I can see no objections to the application and would propose that we take the officer's recommendation and accept the application.
Thank you. Is that seconded, please? Mr. Hockley. Any debate? In that case, may I see all those in favour? Let's pass them in common. Thank you very much. So, Item 8 is application decisions delegated to the Chief Executive, and we will, as usual, go through these page by page. So, is there anything on page 1? Very interesting to see the third application. It's obviously good community work there in Timberscombe. Page 2.
Two halls in one village.
Where are you, Mrs. Nicholson? And page 3.
Quick question on the first one. Solar panels, do they need planning? Depends.
They did need planning permission, partly because of the scale of the solar panels involved. It went beyond what would have been permitted development. Needless to say, though, it is a particularly good scheme, I think. You know, it just shows it's what you can achieve in a national park. Okay? It's 350 solar panels, so quite a big installation, but on the roof of the existing building. You know, so if we can cover the roof of a sort of industrial building as well, it's a really good site to put the solar panels. I think the pitch of the roof particularly helps the efficiency of the solar panels, but it also really means that actually they're not going to be that visible from wide of the field. But even if you could see them, they're on the roof of a building. So I think it's actually a particularly good scheme to come forward.
Excellent. 7 kilowatts.
But the one underneath it for Harbour Lights was withdrawn.
Yes, that's actually quite helpful, isn't it, to have the two together. So this one, so Harbour Lights conservation area, locally there were some concerns with some of the positioning of some of the solar panels. Something can happen here, so it was withdrawn. The applicant decided to withdraw it actually, but with discussion, I think we can get a scheme here. It might result in a couple of less panels, but there's certainly roof slopes on this building which can accommodate it, even though it's within the conservation area. It will work quite well.
Okay.
Great.
Right, well in that case, ladies and gentlemen, site visits, should we decide to have any, the site visit date is Friday the 30th of January. Can I finally say I have been discussing with officers this morning that there does need to be a PPAG, Planning Policy Action Group meeting. We are due one, and it's proving to be quite difficult to fit one around an Exmoor Tuesday, because actually our Exmoor Tuesdays have been quite busy. So we may have to fix a standalone date, so if you could just be aware of that, that could well be a request made of you to agree some dates in the near future. Okay, so just flagging that one up. If there's nothing else, ladies and gentlemen, I will wish you a very happy new year and to 2020. Thank you very much.